So, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jean-David Malo. I'm the European Innovation Council Task Force Director within DG Research and Innovation at the European Commission. It's a pleasure for me to welcome you to our first session today at the Innovative Hub during the EU Research and Innovation Days, which will be dedicated to certainly the most important novelty in the innovation area as far as the framework program for research and innovation at EU level is concerned, which is the establishment and the launch of the European Innovation Council. So a lot of questions regarding what is the EIC, how it will work, what is its purpose. All of this will be discussed with you and will be also co-designed with you, because we are in a pilot phase, and we would like during this period also to learn what we should do, which is even fitting better with the needs of the stakeholders in the coming days, but also in the coming months. In this panel, I have the chance to have remarkable high-level profile people. The 5 persons that you have here are directly involved, in fact, in the advisory of the Commission regarding what has to be done to support disruptive innovation in Europe. So we will have the occasion this morning to listen from them on their views, but you will have, more importantly, the occasion to ask them any question you may have, in particular on the roles they may have regarding their advisory role to the Commission and how they see what has to be done in Europe in order to support radical innovation or disruptive, transformative innovation. Just a few words on my side regarding the EIC. The EIC is a vision that has been emerged, in fact, in one of the first speeches of our current Commissioner for Research, Science and Innovation, Carlos Moedas, a few days after it entered into function, when he has the feeling that it was necessary to do something for innovation as transformative as was the European Research Council for Research. It was the starting point. And over the years, we have tried to identify exactly what were the various bottlenecks that we have to tackle in order to fight against the most important weaknesses in Europe, which is not the generation of knowledge, because there we remain leaders in a number of areas, but which is this capacity to transform knowledge into innovative products that are able later on to create jobs and employment and prosperity in Europe. And there are a number of new ideas emerge. Some of them, of course, are tested now in the EIC pilot. A number of others have to be explored. And here, all of this has been the result, in fact, of exchanges with actors on the ground. And one of the things that Commissioner Moedas launched, in fact, 3 years ago, was a high-level group of innovators in order to advise the Commission of what was needed to be done. And 2 of the people on this round table were part of this group. Niklas Bergman was part of it, and Carlos Oliveira. They will talk about this in a minute. But now that the EIC has been endorsed at the highest level, as you know, at the level of the European Council in last July, and in the partial agreement, political agreement that has been reached between the European Parliament and the Council a few months ago for the Future Horizon Europe program. It's time also to explore what has to be done in order to ensure that we will have a powerful instrument. And in order to do this, it was also very important on the side of the Commission to count on the advice of high-level profile people in the context of an advisory board who met, in fact, for its first meeting yesterday in Brussels, and where 3 other persons here are part of it. Kirsten Bloch, Maria Makarov, and Jazzy Langer, and Carlos, which is making the transition because he's also in the new group. I would like to give the floor to each of you, first of all, regarding what, according to you, should be the key role of the advisory board of the EIC. You are part of it, or you were part of it, in order to best serve as possible the innovators in Europe. What is at stake, really? What are the main objectives you would like to tackle and to address in your role in advising the Commission? Who would like to start? Jazzy.
Good morning, everyone. The first session is always a problem because people barely wake up. So I'll try to give her some early warning, as I should say. And you see, quite a lot of people take these initiatives as a political gamble. But I want to tell you the truth. It's neither a gamble nor a gimmick. It's something absolutely serious, and I would even say revolutionary. And in a short time, I want to convey a few messages, and one of this is the true revolutioner is here in Belgium. This is European Commission. Because most people say, okay, this is bureaucratic, this is procedural, looking through themselves. If you talk to any Brussels citizens, so more or less they will tell that it's wrong. And now why it is completely wrong. So the first question, what drives civilization? Technology, just technology. If we don't explore what kind of new technologies will be confronting us, then we are losing a chance. Right, so that means innovators. Okay, but the point is that it's not only innovate, it's the money behind it. If we are talking money, so yesterday I asked the question you can ask yourself, why coin, which is money, has two sides? You just answer yourself. But in life, always there is a certain duality. And in this business we are talking about, high-tech technologies will drive future to the future. There are two sides of the coin. The first one is researchers, not blue sky researchers, researchers who are nurtured by questions of practical value. They are seeking for novel solutions, novel technologies. This is absolutely not enough. Because then someone has to take the risk, which is again measured by money, and implement it and occasionally make money himself or whatever. And now, European problem. Jean-David just mentioned, what is the problem? That we are good in making knowledge, but not so good in making money out of this knowledge. So now the second question. Each of you likely had this at the entry, because you had this QR scanned and used this as the entry. So I ask you this question, what is the heart of this gimmick? The common answer is microprocessor, right? Okay, what is the heart of the heart? A transistor. But what kind of transistor? FET transistor. FET, remember, FET. Field effect transistor. And the FET transistor, I ask you, who invented that? Well, you say, guys, just go to the Nobel diaries and then you know, the three Americans. I said, wrong, my dear. 1925. It was Julius Lilienfeld, a Polish-born guy who went to Germany, got a PhD under Max Planck, one of the absolute heroes of quantum mechanics. In 1925, working in Leipzig, in Germany, made the first proposal of the field effect transistor. So it, in a nutshell, tells you a whole story. Brains are here, discoveries are here, and the money and fame is over the sea, overseas. So now comes the solution. because we well defined the problem. We have to help innovators. We have to speed up the flow of the knowledge into the market. And finally, we have to convey ourselves that Europe is not a slave and a lost continent at all. Europe is still alive, has a lot of young people, and can do it. And now the final point is the Commission. I mentioned the Commission is the revolutionary. Why? Because it's not the commissionary in the French style. Sorry, you are French. Not in a French style.
Nobody's perfect.
I'm sorry. Well, the time passed by since the French Revolution. So, not fighting. Thinking, listening, deciding, doing. And that's the point. So, a couple of years ago, a startup was grown in the Commission, which was FET, a FET program, like this FET. And the FET was the instrument of collaborative work to provide bright minds the most simple possible solution to get money, resources, and to provide their outcome to the more practical world. And now this FET matured like a startup. So the Commission decided to go to scale-up phase, brought two key elements of the FET, amalgamated into the one program, which is the first side of the coin, and here we are. So I congratulate Jean-David, because as I live long enough to tell the truth, as really truly independent person. You are revolutionary, but I'm afraid that sometimes you don't know that. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jerzy. So Jerzy is a professor emeritus at the Polish Academy of Sciences, among a number of other things. I didn't introduce you. By the way, my grandmother is Polish, so maybe I'm a bit more perfect than what you think. Maria Makaloff, director of the Biocenter Finland, former vice president of the Finnish Academy of Science. So I will not say anything or everything that what you did. Your vision on your side, coming from also the part which is more on the upstream dimension of the EIC initially, but also with the experience in Finland that you have and the work that you had also in the EIT, the transfer towards the innovation, so the downstream dimension and the scale-up dimension of the EIC. Your vision, Maria.
Thank you very much. So the topic of the session is EIC, Pathfinder and Accelerator, and I will touch upon the Pathfinder program, which now deals with advanced research for emerging technologies. Our universities are full of extremely talented people, and I wish and hope that the EIC will not only help but inspire academia to really take seriously the issue of benefit of research findings for society. And we have a lot to do there because, as we know, many researchers, they stop at the research excellence. That is the absolutely necessary foundation, but then we have to go on. And my credo is that the social responsibility of any researcher is to be aware that his or her research findings can be used for benefit of society. And this is not an issue for an individual, but the community has to embrace this attitude and this mindset. Now we have, of course, fantastic individuals who have done this, the transition to research findings for the benefit of society, whether commercial or otherwise. And there are fantastic examples of universities which have strategies for this and which are implementing this translation very effectively and always based on excellence of science. But they are an exception. And I think that in Europe, the universities in corpore should embrace really this mission. And indeed, the legislation on universities has in it the third mission, which is benefit for society, but it has to be spelled out more clearly what we mean with this. Now, you asked for maybe examples of Finland and then to say something about the EIT. Now, we have heard many times the question already now. We had our first meeting only yesterday, as we heard. So the question is whether these are overlapping, whether they are doing the same thing or not. Not at all. Our understanding at the moment is that these two instruments are absolutely complementary. So they have different philosophies. With the EIC, we are talking about individual innovators, individual startups, embracing any theme. Then again, EIT is built on these KICs, these knowledge and innovation communities, which are thematic. And EIT is about ecosystem building. So I could imagine that there are many startups who have been born in the context of the EIT and which are already accelerating, which now would be very natural clients to the EIC instruments. What about Finland? Let me very shortly take one example of a sector, and this is the biotechnology sector, biomedical sector, health sector. Like in so many other countries, many tens of years ago, these biocenters were built, and Nokia was at that time the Nokia. So the researchers in the field said, we are going to build a bio-Nokia, just give us all the money and build these biocenters and give me the equipment and the money and we will create a bio-Nokia. It never realized itself. Why? Well, there was a structural problem because there was no absorptive capacity in the country, meaning there was no industry, pre-existing industry, which would have been absorbing the innovations, the ideas, and also the graduates. So there's nothing like a bio-Nokia, and our private sector concerning now startups emerging from the high-quality research in this area, they are quite few. It's getting better, but it's not at all at the level where it could be. And now comes EIC in with the Pathfinder instrument, with the Accelerator instrument. And I think that Finland is one example of the countries which really will need these instruments and this program and will benefit.
Thank you, Maria. Yeah, you can, of course. So we heard about this revolutionary approach. An important message, I think, coming from Maria is indeed that this instrument has its own place within the innovation ecosystem in complementarity with others. I think it's a very important message. And the other key message that you mentioned, I think, is that it is also open to the academia world, which was one of the misunderstandings at the moment the discussion took place, because the focus initially was mainly, of course, on the downstream part of the EIC, where we have a lot to do because we have a number of weaknesses to be tackled. And here, before giving the floor to Kerstin, I would like to give the floor to Carlos, because moving to and also to Niklas, because looking at this downstream part, I mean, these key weaknesses that we have in Europe regarding the scaling up, in particular of deep tech, as you said, Jazzy and Maria, startup and SMEs. How do you see the role of the EIC in this context? What is needed according to you?
Well, good morning and thank you for the invitation. Before I go there, if you don't mind, Jean-David, I think that what the high-level group did in the first 2 years of its existence was really to try to help the Commission to shape this vision of what was this idea of a European Innovation Council and what should be really the target. And our recommendations, the recommendations that the group did, were basically known as FAST, working on funding, which was one of the problems that was addressed and was preventing Europe to really be back again to the world stage as one of the leaders in innovation, which is different from knowledge and from science. Awareness, so that people know that Europe can do and can be the right place, and the EIC can be one of the engines to make Europe more appealing for innovators to scale up their companies and bring them to the results that are needed for us to have a better Europe, and a Europe that can have the values that we like and the social sustainability that we all want to continue to have. Then the third, the yes of FAST was scale up, and exactly on the point that Jean-David was saying, there's clearly a problem in the European companies to scale up to a global level where they can really be impactful and create the number of jobs, the wealth that Europe needs and that we should have because of the science and the knowledge that we generate. And the fourth area of recommendations was the T from FAST, which is talent. We really need to nurture and work the talent with the skills of the future in research and in other areas, so that we keep having this deal flow or this opportunity to have this flow of knowledge that can then be translated into products and into companies in the future. So I really believe that we are talking about here, when we talk about the EIC, is really about the future of Europe. Certainly, EIC will not be the silver bullet that will sort out all the problems that Europe has and all the things that we need to improve, but certainly can be an important orchestrator. It's always very hard for people that come from companies to understand how to relate with the public bodies, because there are many of them that are interacting. So I believe that one of the opportunities for EIC is also to be this one-stop shop where people could address, the innovators could address the Commission and understand what can be of use for them to scale up their businesses and to be more successful, to create more jobs. And the EIC here plays an important role as per our conversations, which is really understanding this flow between science and knowledge and then innovation that, in my perspective, only happens in companies or in the market, if you want to be more precise. So we have a flow, and this is undoubtable from all the research and all the reports, that Europe is creating a lot of knowledge, and as Jerzy said, then is being explored by other continents and by other entities, even in several times with funding from the European Commission that is not even known by people. So having this opportunity, I think that EIC is not for researchers, is not for only for companies or for startups, is really to embrace this opportunity of co-creation, where people sit on the table, discuss the problems. No one has the silver bullet to sort out specific problems to society, but together, people from industry, people from the market that really understand what are the market needs and problems to be sorted out, working together with scientists and research and people that have the knowledge, can find the better solutions that eventually will create companies. And I think that going to the accelerator part, which is the other side of the coin of the EIC. So one side is this part more out to of the Pathfinder that was already talked. The accelerator really wants to put the emphasis on the innovators and helping them to scale up. And there are here very important innovations, some already occurring in this pilot stage, which very basic things that seem very obvious, but that were very complex to implement, and they were possible to implement due to the great work of the Commission and the team led by Jean-David, which is, for instance, now people that send a proposal or apply to an accelerator grant or equity, I'll go through that, will be interviewed by a group of experts. It's not anymore a black box of people having good consultants to write applications and then hopefully that will be accepted. No, now you will go there and you will, with your passion, with your knowledge, show why the Commission should bet in your project. And this is seems a very small thing, but the results, and maybe Jean-David can talk about that, show the shift that it had, because now projects that probably would be below the cut are now being accepted because they really sort out problems and they look very important. And this is also a key aspect of the EIC changes, is also this bottom-up approach. Not an approach where the Commission thinks that they know everything, where you should work on and send proposals in thematic ways, even if that's important. But here, this gives the opportunity for people to approach and say, I believe that this is a very important problem to be sorted out, and I would like to have help in funding. And I will not spend too much time, but just saying that one of the key innovations is really this blended mechanism between grants and funding that is now starting, and there's a course ending now in October, where an innovator, a company, an entrepreneur can apply And it's not only a grant that you can apply for, but also equity in the company. And this really can make an effect that is very important, which is increase a lot the funding. This funding in equity can go up to 15 million euros plus 2, which is, I believe, the maximum in grants, which means that this can really make the difference. Because one of the key findings that we did in our group, in the high-level group, was really that there's no patient capital in Europe for deep tech investments. And usually this is very small capital. So when we start talking about this opportunity of having up to 15 million plus 2 in grants, and also coming, partnering with the private sector to co-invest, this will potentially help these scale-ups and to address one of the key issues that were identified. There are many more, but I won't spend more time right now.
Thanks a lot. He deserves also your applause.
Thank you. I think that you needed to ask for that. So.
No, so Carlos is a serial entrepreneur. I mean, I would like to underline this. He knows about what it means to create an enterprise and to be faced with the difficulty to attract investments and to build the growth of a company. Niklas, you were there at the very beginning also. And one of the novelties that you underline, Carlos, is indeed that in order to tackle these very particular market failures that we have in Europe in the scaling up, one of the novelty at the end is something that appear as indeed a revolution, if not a crime for some venture capitalists at the beginning, was that for the first time a public administration via a fund will invest directly in a startup. What is your feeling about this? How do you see it? Do you think it's a good approach? It's challenging? What are the obstacles that will have to be tackled? And in addition to this, I mean, you were in the group. I remember the very important contribution that you personally made, but the whole group, of course, in the FAST contribution, the Europe is Back contribution, where you came with a series of 14 recommendations. Which of the 14 recommendations, or of the key recommendations, do you consider the most important, in particular for the scale-up part of the EIC?
Well, just to say, I can really recall all the 14 by heart, but I mean, just to follow up on Carlos here, I think that what I find really fascinating with what we did and what you guys will continue doing is that we're seeing the challenge and actually addressing that challenge. And just to add to Carlos here, I also think that the risk-taking is an essential part in this. The fact that we very early on in the discussion realized that we need to take risks in this. And that, I mean, talking about challenges, what we're facing in implementing this is to foster this notion of actually taking risk as the European Commission been able to do in the European Research Council, for example. Taking risk in funding research, we need to take risk in funding startups, funding scale-ups. So I think that's, for me, is one of the most important things here.
Kirsten, you are the CEO of Opener, so you have another view of all these debates. You are not coming from the upstream part, not really from the downstream part, despite the fact that you are a mentor for a number of startup initiatives. What is your vision?
Yeah, where do I start? Yeah, maybe just a little bit of background. So I'm Kerstin. I'm working in tech and startups also for the past 10 years. We do run an event called Tech Open Air in Berlin. So every year we bring together like 20,000 innovators from Europe. So I guess I'm rather here to talk about, you know, not what I need, but what they need. So I see these people get in and out every year. And I think, you know, so yesterday we talked about it, that we have the permission to be troublemakers, right? At least that's what I signed up for, I guess, in this. And I think, you know, with the EIC, and we talked about it, like Carlos just mentioned it, I think, and that's also a word that we heard a lot yesterday, we really want to design an operational tool, like a competitive tool, actually, you know, which entrepreneurs enables to like really grow and scale up in Europe, or like even beyond, but, you know, as a company coming from Europe. And at the same time, I think the way that we can do that, you know, also entrepreneurs aren't, let's say, scared of applying for public funding and public tools is really that we design these tools in a way that they are competitive. So we also talked about that's just the starting point, you know, and the, I guess, funding and money that is provided by the EIC should really increase also the funding coming from the private sector in Europe. So like talking about co-investing, so we really want to design something that is out there in the market. And I think our role should also be to really get into the community, talk to these guys, be, you know, really, I guess, and this is also why it's really good that you're all here today, because, you know, we just had this first kickoff meeting of the new advisory board yesterday, and there's like so many more changes and tools coming up, and we're here to really listen what these people need, what these guys need, and we really try to, I guess, translate that into the tools in the end, or that's at least what we're here for, and that's my vision, to really come up with, I guess, tools and measurements that enable in the daily business of the growth of these startups.
Thank you. But she also deserves your applause. I mean, I know it's quite early, but Niklas, I stopped a little bit too early on what I'm sure you were ready to talk in particular regarding the challenges you see in the implementation, because I mean we are continuing to work in fact with you, not in the context of the EIC advisory board, but in particular in the way we will implement the EIC Accelerator. Could you say a little bit about this?
Well, yes. I mean, what we're hoping for are, of course, a lot of applications, and good applications. Not necessarily. Let's start with a lot of applications, and then we have the challenge in finding the good ones. I mean, that's exactly where it is. Because, I mean, not me, but these 4 people, they have a lot of money. So I was invited. I was part of a discussion a couple of weeks ago here in Brussels with the experts actually evaluating these, and that was a really good discussion, because in the past, and I've seen it, probably some of you have as well, the challenge in actually sorting out all the, on the one hand, on the expert and the commission side, understanding the applicants, the companies, the ideas, and on the other hand, to get more and more applications in, meaning that that process should be as simple as possible, and at the same time not wasting anyone's time or money. So that is definitely a challenge. But we had a really good discussion here a couple of weeks ago in trying to simplify the process, the applications, and also instead probably, hopefully, putting in place a couple of gates where we can have a really simple first application, realizing that this is something interesting, we want to move forward with this, then you can ask for more and more information. In a lot like the traditional venture capitalist is doing it, where you have an initial meeting, you get some very basic information about the idea, you get sort of an elevator pitch more or less, and then once it starts working, you fill in the gaps and you go further and further into the documentation and everything you need to actually make sure that it's relevant and it's suitable for this kind of funding. Because I think there is a challenge, because with the EIC now we want to attract, I mean, the best companies in Europe. And some of the best companies in Europe in the past has not been aware of the fact that there are interesting funding opportunities here. So we want to raise the awareness of that as well.
Thank you, Niklas. We have a short meeting, so I would like now maybe to give the floor to the audience to ask any question to our panelists. But I'm already saying to my panelists that in the same time, think about a 30-second sentence that you would like to share with everybody regarding EIC, the challenges, or how the success could look like, or something that for you is representative of what is or what should be the EIC. Who would like to ask a question to our panelists? Don't be shy. Don't tell me that you don't want to know more about the EIC.
This is not Sweden. Please.
Oh, that's a big microphone. Just a general question with respect to the European universities and the transfer offices, the ones who try to translate research results and find ways to innovate and commercialize those results. Now, what do you think about the status of all the transfer offices in general of all those universities? Because I believe they should be packed with entrepreneurs, but they are not.
If I may say something, thank you very much for the question. So this is a crucial thing. So first of all, you touched upon competence. This is a crucial issue. Competence that should be there, and also sort of street, credibility of the competence, so that the top researchers will want to discuss with these people who populate these TTOs. Another thing is fragmentation. Even in a small country like Finland, every university, and we have very small ones and then a couple of bigger ones, they have their own. And we have already many years ago identified that this is too fragmented, so we should have pooling of talent and competence and science so that the critical mass is high enough.
Like just to quickly add, so actually that's been a discussion that we also had yesterday quite a lot. So about, even start earlier. So really talk to young talent and really, also see how can we emphasize that actually becoming a founder, starting a company is even an option. So that's one point that we also want to do as the EIC advisory board, I guess. And B, at the same time though, and we had kind of heated discussions about that yesterday, that not every founder really has this academic background at the same time, right? So we really want to, obviously go into the universities and also, see that we connect the research and I guess the market and how can we make that happen. But at the same time, really look also for the innovators which potentially aren't coming with this academic background. Because if you look into the, US and Asia and all these markets that we are competing with, that's the reality. And we really want to connect the two worlds, but that's also something we have to keep in mind.
So I think that's one of the key questions, and the answer is probably not the $1 million answer that needs to be created by everyone. My perspective is, and this is my personal perspective, is that that's really something that universities should invest significantly in, hiring resources that are specialists in the market side, probably not academic people, really people that understand the market and they can interact with companies and then bring the expertise, the researchers to the equation. And that's working in some institutions in Europe. I think that we have tremendous good examples in Israel. Just an entity like Technion, I don't know the number today, but in 2012 when I visited them, they were selling $50 million a year in IP, just Technion. So, and they were doing this, so I don't think that we need to invent a lot. I think that we need to look at good examples in the world and foster. What I believe, and from the examples that I've seen in universities, and I don't think that there is this serious investment in getting the right people that can address the problem. The other point is really the fragmentation issue. In my perspective, EIC, and we talked about this yesterday, potentially could try to help on identifying maybe a per country basis what are the 10, 15 most important things that could be put in an international portfolio of things to be shown to companies. And again, this will be a tough project in very democratic institutions like universities, because there will need to be a selection, which by the way is very different from selecting science by excellence, which has peer reviews and very standardized ways to analyze. In this field, and this is one of the big challenges of the EIC, there are no such standard metrics. But having this opportunity to select the things that could be more important from a market perspective, and I give you an example from, I work a lot with universities, and I think that the thing here is that responsibility for the lack of success in this transformation is in both parties, in the industry and in academia. Because this starts with a very simple thing, with dialogue. People sitting at the same table and discussing, this is my problem, how can you help us? And no one is going to bring the solution. The solution will be constructed together based on bits and bytes of knowledge and science that can bring an optimized solution to the problem. So, and this is not an easy thing to do. There are very good examples throughout Europe, but again, they need the scale to make an impact, and I think that EIC will also work on that. You mentioned a very important thing, which is universities need to be surrounded by entrepreneurs. And in Europe, we don't have a track record of entrepreneurs in residence. This is a key thing. We need to bring to this ecosystem people that already did some work, that already have some successes or failures, and that could help, because I think that the last thing that Europe needs is to transform great scientists into so-so or into so-so entrepreneurs, because they might be the best guys to be there as chief scientific officers or as consultants of those startups, and I think that this needs to be the mindset. And some, of course, some will be great entrepreneurs, by the way.
You would like to say a word, Jersey, and then I see another question in the room.
I see there is sorry. We have to be very careful not to fall into the false expectations. EIC is not to solve all problems of the world. EIC is not going to solve the problem of universities. It's been with us since centuries, the same question. So it's not that. The EIC is for individuals, small groups, small companies, not big banks, nothing of that sort. So it's very important. We wish to avoid all this lobbying, all these consultancies, writing or whatever. No, directly to the person, directly to, well, it's hard to say brain, but let's say to that person. This is one very important element which was not touched yet upon. Right to failure. Right to failure. And without that, nothing will happen. So we have to admit a lot of these good ideas are for nothing.
Another, I mean, there, it's another, indeed, it's an important point, this right to fail. And it's echoing what you were saying on the level of risk that we are ready to take. It's very important, and it's also a change of mind, change of culture also on the administration world, I can tell you. So it's also a work to be done on our side. Please go ahead.
Question?
So thank you all, and I'm very happy of this initiative. As an entrepreneur, I wish this would have existed when I started my company, but I'm really proud of the Commission and your team. I think this is great. One of the objectives of the EIC is to make Europe compete with Asia and the US. And one question for all of you is, what do you think on the bright side are the key strengths of Europe? That this is a tool, right? So the EIC is a tool to make innovation scale. But what do you think are the strengths of Europe that are going to allow us to compete with these other two continents? Why do you think we are different, and where is our opportunity?
Who would like to answer? Niklas.
Yeah, I mean, this touches on another thing that we've been discussing, at least in the old group. Not sure about the new one here, but and this is also a branding issue. It's a branding issue for the EIC. It's a branding issue for funding in Europe, and it's a branding issue for Europe. I mean, we see a lot of things that's happening in the world now, and for me, there's a couple of things. And one is the freedom of trade. Europe is very much pro-trade. We see a lot of different opinions on trade and protectionism in the world today. We got a freedom of expression. Freedom of speech, which is very obvious here and less obvious in some other parts of the world. We also have a great quality of life here. The environment, the way of living. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that we could push that are not necessarily exactly to do with funding, entrepreneurship, research, and those things. But in a broader perspective, I think this is something that we can push. And I mean, there are examples of people actually moving from other parts of the world to Europe because they see these things. And we just need to promote that a bit more, I think.
Yeah, super quickly to add. Actually, we also discussed this a lot yesterday. Like not to only focus, on the weaknesses. I guess, since Europe still is a fragmented market, and we also do know that on the product side, it's just really difficult to, I guess, deploy. And if you go to Asia or the US, these markets are just big enough. But at the same time, I guess, and me coming from Berlin and actually being based in a startup ecosystem, which is entirely based on the fact that we have a good quality of life and that it's been super cheap 10 years ago, kind of shows that also, from a fact like this, oh, well, that was my iPad, something can really grow, and I think that like this, these ethics, the quality of life that we have to actually attract talent, it's really something that we, where we can really, I think, build upon, I guess.
I'll give a reply as a politician. I think that we'll be strong in whatever we want to be strong. And so our focus should be on, and the EIC has an important role there, in leveling the field and providing the tools so that people, individually or in groups, do what they believe from Europe. So instead of happening what is happening today in many areas like digital, where we have great entrepreneurs with great technology that need to go to the US to be successful. And of course, we also have a few examples of people that can be successful in Europe. We need to champion these guys to show that that idea that the US and now Asia are the only places where you can be very successful, it's not true. But certainly, we need to understand why people think like this. And the EIC will be key on showing that you can do things here. So there are pitfalls that we fall. So imagine in digital, in direct to consumer, we say we have the same or almost the same size of the market of the US. That's not true. If someone starts a company, think like this in the direct to consumer, we'll face a lot of problems. It's not true that we have almost 500 million citizens, but they are fragmented with different cultural things, which makes Europe great. But from a perspective that you can launch here and then immediately have access to 500 million is not still a reality. And probably due to our how Europe is built, will never be, and that's for good probably. So, but we need to understand, and certainly there are areas where probably will be more successful in B2B than probably in very large direct-to-consumer approaches, because then we can really solve problems in a more oriented way. But I don't want to jump to conclusion. I think that this is, and the EIC opportunity is really this. We don't want to tell you what to do. We want to create a framework where people can come and say, I'd like to innovate here. Does the Commission believe that this is an important thing that they can help? And I think that this is also game-changing in terms of the perspective of the Commission.
Just building on what you said and echoing what was discussed also yesterday in the first meeting, I remember one of the members said, I think it was Bruno Sportis, when he talked about the vision of the EIC, that it was also a question of defending a model of society and the sovereignty of Europe. Because if we are not anymore innovation leaders in a number of areas, this is the other who will impose their vision of the world. So we have therefore to be leaders. Otherwise, we will not be able to defend our quality of life the way we see the interaction between people and the place in the society. I have a question here. I take another there, and then unfortunately we will have to close the session. The time is running very fast. Please.
Does this really work?
So if it does not work, it's working.
It's working?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Well, so I'm Matti Hiltunen from Business Finland, the Finnish innovation agency. EIC is a very important thing not for us, but for our very best customers. And I know this is a big one, and you have not only gone around it, but already touched it, but still, I try. Should EIC be a brand? And what kind of brand? What's the message to customers? Any ideas for a slogan?
Oh yes, we talked a lot about that yesterday. There was a really heated discussion also. 100%. This is like really so, and Carlos and I, all of us, like, we really want to help building that. And I think that, I talked about like making this tool something that, I really mean it, like that entrepreneurs aren't scared of, in a way, like that they're actually big fans of it, that they really see this as like an operational, I guess, VC tool even, maybe somehow, like to really compete. And we talked about, you know, we don't want to be in like the back rooms of these stages at the startup events. We want to be on stage with the VCs and really show that we can compete with them. So that's totally something that we have on the roadmap. And I think there's been already a lot of work on the vision and the statements and so on, like in the previous years. And we really want to just take the chance now to build upon that brand and bring it out there. And that's really something we want to try to help, yeah.
Yeah, I think that this is the most important topic right now, which is we need to bring this to the right stakeholders that are your customers, that are our customers, and that have not been the customers of the Commission in this area for in the past years. And so we really believe that we need to create a brand not for the EIC but for Europe. And the EIC brands could be that brand that can, if the things are done well, can be the brand that shows that Europe is really a great place to innovate and to create companies that can scale.
Well, I think that EIC is not going to be an institution. It's a state of mind. If we take this as a state of mind, that means it's a diversion of public money into public goods by public institution. Very rarely happening anywhere in the world. So this is breaking the wall, a mental wall. So brand will come later.
Thank you. Eunice from Luxembourg. So I was working 7 years with, for the Luxembourg Innovation Agency. So I have some former colleagues here from IGLO and then doing some lobbying in Brussels. So I'm come from the public sector and now I'm an entrepreneur. I'm helping companies access to funding. So I do not agree with some statements with consultants because there are different types of consultants, but that's another story. My two questions are, when the SPV will be created, the legal entity Hive, I think, in Luxembourg. The second question is, what is the link between the EIC and InvestEU, knowing that, from my understanding, InvestEU is not about disruptive and market-creating innovation? And, oh, sorry, I have a third question. Quality control for the October deadline, financial sheet guidelines, there are many, many inconsistencies. And the people who are the proposers, they are in panic, total panic now for the deadline. So I'm telling you, and I work closely with them, and we're really working together. So, thank you.
So it's a challenging question, so it's for me.
Sorry, Jean-David.
I take care of you. Very, very simple. Regarding your first question, we discussed it yesterday. I mean, we informed the member yesterday, and we informed, by the way, all the member states, all the PCN, I mean, the national contact points, so you know about you know about the state of play of the SPV, but it's great because now I will have the possibility to say more. So the SPV is not anymore an SPV. I mean, an SPV is a terminology that you are using when you don't know yet what it will be. A specific purpose vehicle means nothing and everything.
I agree.
Okay, so at the end it will be a fund. And it will be a fund built on the basis of the RAIF law in Luxembourg. So it's very clear and very concrete. So it will be an evergreen fund with the possibility of variable geometry capital, with the possibility to structure compartment over the time, over the geography, over the thematic area, the possibility to attract other funders. So a fund that will allow us to implement the pilot, which will be mainly based on the equity dimension as far as the blended finance is concerned, but also in the future to provide any other type of finance, including debt financing and any form of debt financing. So this is the reason why we have decided to use this. The status are going to be recorded in the coming weeks, and the fund will be operational by November, in order to be used for the due diligence step of the evaluation of our first call already in December. So all of this is on track. Now the link with InvestEU. So InvestEU, for people in the room who doesn't know what is InvestEU, another acronym of the Brussels world. InvestEU is in fact the investment program of the European Union. So it's a successor, if you want, of the current Juncker plan, the European Fund for Strategic Investment, among other things, because the Juncker plan is not only the European Fund for Strategic Investment, but this is the fund under the Juncker plan. So under InvestEU, indeed, there will be support to research, digitization, innovation in a specific window, but also on SMEs, and in particular innovative SMEs, on infrastructure, as well as on social and innovation skills. And in this context, disruptive innovation can be financed. Can be, not cannot, can be financed. The main difference between the EIC and the InvestEU scheme is that the EIC, in particular the EIC Accelerator, is intervening before. Why? Because the main target group on the case of the EIC are entities that are not yet fully attractive for the private sector, which explain why it's necessary for the public administration to intervene on the market. Otherwise, we will not intervene because it will create a crowding out effect on the private sector. So we are intervening before, and once the company is attractive enough, but nevertheless is looking for additional follow-on investment round, I mean, InvestEU will intervene because there the type of market failure which is addressed is of a different nature. There the idea is to de-risk the investment of the level of the fund, not at the level of the company per se. So this is a rationale. But what we will ensure, and we discussed it also last day, so yesterday, is a continuum between EIC Accelerator and InvestEU scheme. So I am told that we are very late, so I will have to close the question and answer session. And just to give the floor to our panelists that I would like to thank again warmly for a last word. So who would like to start with the 30-second last sentence? Jersey.
Take your smartphone and make the selfie either in this room or in front of this room or in front of Jean-David, whatever you wish. Why? 100 years ago, such a photo was made, and it was at the Metropole Hotel. And that was the first of the kind. And actually the first big international conference sponsored by Mr. Solvay, who made a lot of money on soda production, which is the industrialist. And he invited whom? Maria Skłodowska-Curie, Albert Einstein, Niels Bohr. And that was the beginning of the quantum revolution of the world. You are witnesses and the participants of the biggest revolution ever, because this institution which is going to be created will change the paradigm which says public institution is just to distribute money, and actually it's a stopping progress. We'll prove you that this is wrong. Thank you.
We all are co-creating here something totally new. Spread the enthusiasm and spread the awareness.
Yeah, I also just want to say, you know, like take that selfie and spread the word, because that's something that we're totally gonna need. And I think, you know, I mean, EIC is really supposed to be a tool to make Europe and European entrepreneurs competitive. So, you know, we need you to make that happen. So, yeah.
Every time there is innovation, and the EIC is a big innovation in an entity like the Commission, there is reluctancy, there is fear, there is everything. So let's not focus on the small details of things as they grow. And EIC is being built as a startup in the sense that it's learning and incorporating these learnings on a daily basis, let's say. So I think that's very important and going to the point. And I think that, as everyone has been saying, if we execute this well, and it's about all, not us, not them, all of us, if we execute this well, I think that we have here the great platform to make a real change in Europe.
Yes, and as I said before, please help us to take more risk. That's about it.
Thanks again to all the panelists. Thanks to all of you. Enjoy the rest of the day, and let's try together to make Europe great innovators and world leaders again. Thank you.